Do you ever see someone and it is just so clear that they are living in full alignment with what they're supposed to be doing in life? And you're like, how the fuck did they figure that out? So today we're going to talk about how to figure it out. We're going to create a roadmap to actually figure out what your purpose is in life. If you don't know me, my name is Haley and I'm your realistic and balanced bestie, helping you build a stronger brain and body. Like I said, today we are talking all things finding our purpose, why it's so hard to find our purpose in our 20s. Your 20s are just such a ridiculous time, if we're being honest. It's so confusing and nobody has the same exact life path, even when it looks like they might from social media or from growing up in a small town or just growing up in a very tight-knit community. It can be really easy to compare ourselves to everybody else and be like, oh, well, everyone else is doing this, so that means I need to do it. But in reality, there's no right or wrong way to go about finding your purpose, go about living your 20s. So we're going to break it all down today. Before we get into all of that, please make sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel here because it really does help me out so much and it helps push this content to more people. So it's a win-win. And as always, be sure to check out the description below for a bunch of free resources for your fitness and mindset journey. Now, let's jump right into talking about why it is so hard to find our purpose in life. So number one, and possibly the biggest thing that makes it so hard to actually feel fulfilled and feel like we're doing what we're supposed to be, is the constant comparison to other people. And this is also kind of gonna blend into the paradox of choice, where there's just so many options and we are constantly bombarded by every other person's life and seeing every single aspect of it, because social media makes it so easy for us to see every single little aspect of somebody's life. You see their stories, you see some people doing daily vlogs, you see some people just posting every single thing that they're doing in a day, and it makes it so easy for us to be like, oh my god, like their life is so ideal, they're living such a fulfilled life, they're so happy, I want to do that, I need to do that because that made them successful, so how do I do that? And it can be so hard for us to really understand and grasp the fact that everybody is really just showing the good parts of their life, whether they realize it or not. And I think a lot of people, even the people who you think are so real and so raw and so open about everything they're going through, they're not going to share every single detail every single time. But we think that they're sharing every single detail every single time. So we think, oh, well, they've never really had anything that bad happen to them. Like maybe they had a few struggles that they went through, but overall their life is just so much better than mine. And this makes it almost impossible for us to actually take a step back and be like, what do I actually want out of life? What do I want to do? When you're constantly just seeing what everybody else is doing, and whether you realize it or not, you're comparing yourself to where they're at in life and what they're doing and what happiness is to them. And I think it just makes it so hard because there are so many opportunities and there's so many different life paths and things that we could take nowadays, and it's overwhelming. You're like, oh my god, I want to be a painter, I want to be a writer, I want to be a dance instructor, I want to be a teacher, I want to own my own business, I want to be an accountant, I want to go into finance, I want to do all of these things, and they're all options now because there's just so many different things that we can do, and it's so overwhelming to be like, I have to pick just one thing to do. And unfortunately, realistically, we do have to pick at least one thing to focus on at a time. You're never gonna really be in a place where you can give 100% of you to multiple different passions at once. That's just not the reality of it. And I think another thing that makes it really hard is the fact that we have this idea that our purpose has to be tied to a monetary gain. Like whatever we're doing with our life has to absolutely make us money, and sometimes your purpose isn't gonna be something that's necessarily going to pay all of your bills or make you rich or make you a millionaire. Sometimes you might find out that your passion or your purpose in life is actually just something on a more, call it spiritual level for lack of a better word, but it might just be to connect to certain people or help certain people or just do things that are a little bit less of a job per se and more so just something that's going to make you feel really fulfilled and help the lives of other people. And I think just in general, the idea that a purpose has to be a huge, big, ginormous thing is something that has kind of come from seeing all these people on social media and seeing people's lives and just comparing ourselves to them and seeing how big and how loud they live and thinking that, oh, if I find my purpose, I'm going to be living as big and extravagant of a life as them, when in reality, your purpose might not be life-changing. It might not be world-changing. It might not even be something that changes your entire city. It might just be something that changes your own life and maybe changes the life of the people that are closest to you, but it doesn't have to be a huge, giant, extravagant thing. Because there are people who are so passionate about working at a grocery store. If you've ever been at a maybe convenience store or grocery store or whatever it is, just a small town little store, and you see somebody who's working there and they are just the happiest person in the entire world, and you leave that place being like, wow, I feel really good right now. Like that was a really heartfelt moment that I just had when she was bagging my groceries. And that's not to say that that person's passion in life is necessarily working at a grocery store, but maybe their passion is just making people feel good about themselves. And they found a way to do it that works with their schedule, works with their life, and is pretty relatively easy for them to actually accomplish. And that is something that I think is a little bit more realistic for everybody to strive for than to strive for a giant, huge, wonderful, life-changing experience. But of course, we can't talk about passion without talking about the fact that we all kind of have this underlying sense of guilt around trying to live our life for other people and trying to make other people happy, whether it's your parents, whether it's a partner, whether it's even your friends. You might constantly be keeping their opinion in the back of your mind, whether you realize it or not. I feel like you see this a lot in parent and child relationships where it's like the stereotypical, the dad wants you to play football, but you want to go into music, or something along those lines, where it's so clear that the person is only doing it to make somebody else in their life happy and completely ignoring their own desires and their own passions in life. But I think we kind of stick to this even on a smaller level. So even in the sense that I know some people who won't move away from home because their parents don't want them to move away from home, but they know that they want to be in another city or they want to get out and do something else, but because they know that it would make their parent happier if they stay home, they stay at home. And same with partnerships. There are people who are like, oh, well, my boyfriend would prefer if I did this for work instead of this. There are so many people who, I feel like I see this on social media quite a lot, where it's like, oh, my boyfriend isn't supportive of me wanting to be a content creator, or he's not supportive of me wanting to start doing social media things in general, and so they just don't do it. And then they're like, okay, I'm just gonna go work my normal job and come home every day and that's it. But they know that they would be a lot happier if they were actually pursuing something that made them excited every single day. So I kind of think the moral of the story is just to kind of take everybody else's opinions and their thoughts completely out of the picture, because at the end of the day, everyone is always going to have some kind of opinion on what you're doing, whether it's good, whether it's bad. No matter what it is, people are always going to have something to say about what you're doing with your life. They're always going to have something to say about you in general, and the quicker that you can just accept that and be like, okay, they're gonna have their opinion. I might hurt some feelings. I might upset some people by doing certain things. But at the end of the day, this is my life to live, and I have to do the things that I actually feel aligned to and that I just want to do in general. And I think it sucks because we've come to the conclusion, I feel like, that any choice that we make in life has to be this big and really aligned and really well thought out and super structured idea, when sometimes we just want to do what we want to do. And obviously there's caveats here, where if you're going off and trying to do something that's dangerous or harmful or something that's just not good, obviously, yes, the people in your life are going to be like, don't do that, that's not a good idea. But when it comes to small little things, like maybe you want to get a truck and your family's like, no, it's smarter for you to get a car, but you really want a truck, and you're like, I want to get this truck, but my family wants me to keep a car, so I'm just going to keep the car. And you end up putting off something that you want that might not be a huge life-changing experience, but it's something that you want and it's something that you feel like you should do. So I think even just trusting yourself and following your desires in that aspect, when it's something small and something where you're like, I know nobody else wants me to do this, but I want to do it, so I'm going to do it no matter what they say, is a great way to really start to try to make your own path and to not listen to what everybody else has laid out for you, because at the end of the day, everyone has a roadmap essentially of what they think your life should look like. And I think people have it out of good intentions, especially people like family and things, but they see your life going one way and they see it from a completely outside perspective. And no matter how well somebody thinks they know you, they never will actually know who you really are on the inside, what your thoughts are like, what your desires are, what your feelings are. They just see the version of you that they want to see. They see the version of you that benefits them the most, essentially. And not necessarily in a controlling way always, but in the sense that to your mother, you staying at home and living with her and working a normal, boring job is going to benefit her the most, because that's going to keep you safe. You moving off and maybe going to backpack Europe or to go on a crazy hike, that's not going to benefit her, because in her mind, that's putting you in a dangerous situation that could potentially injure you or change your life in some way. And that's not going to benefit her, because that takes you off this path that she's created for you in her mind. So at the end of the day, you have to keep in mind that when people are telling you their opinion, they're doing it from the scope of wanting to see you stay the version that's going to benefit them. So now that we've talked about why it's so hard to actually find what our purpose is, let's figure out how to actually do it. What are the steps that we can take to align to the person that we actually want to be? So the first step, and possibly the most under talked about step that I've ever heard, is to find out what you don't like. Everyone is always talking about, oh, you have to just, try to think about the things that you want to do with your life. Think about what jobs you want to have. But the biggest way to actually figure out what jobs you want to have and what things you want to do with your life is to figure out what you don't want. So if you've ever worked in the service industry, or you've ever worked a random little job, like one time I worked at a candy shop and it was the most random job ever, but it was absolutely horrible, and I would never again in my entire life work at a candy shop because of this place. So in my mind, when I was trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life, one of the first and easiest things to put on my list of things I don't like was working at a candy shop. This could even be for subjects you didn't like in school, things that you don't like doing. Maybe you've gone out with your friends one day and you guys tried to do some random adventure and you were like, I don't really like that. I don't like that place we went. I don't like that thing we did. Anything that you can identify as something that you don't like or something that you would not enjoy doing for the rest of your life is an easy thing to put on this side of the list. And then you can start to work backwards and be like, okay, what would be the opposite of this? Or finding what's a common theme here. Is the common theme that you don't like things that are boring and meticulous and consistently going to be the same thing every single day? Then you can kind of narrow out some job opportunities or some life paths by being like, okay, well, what are things that are not meticulous and not going to be the same every single day? Another thing that you can do is actually use jealousy as a guide. And I feel like a lot of times we bash jealousy and we think of it as such a big bad thing. And obviously it's not great to really narrow in on and constantly be jealous of other people, but you can kind of use it as a guide to be like, okay, when I feel jealous of somebody, that means that I see something in their life that I want. And you can kind of dive a little bit deeper and be like, what part of their life am I actually jealous of? And what things do they have that I really want? And why do I want them? And you can start to kind of look at their life as a roadmap and be like, okay, what did they do to get here? And if you can find somebody who has either done a job that you look at and you're like, this is my dream job, this is something I would kill to do every single day, or even a hobby that you would kill to do every single day. If you see somebody who is living a life that makes you feel that sense of jealousy, but also that sense of like curiosity of like how they did this and how they achieved this, those are the people that you should kind of start to dissect their life a little bit and be like, let me dig a little bit deeper and see if I can figure out how they did this, what steps they took, and not completely copy it, but kind of copy the blueprint. So being like, okay, they started off by doing this kind of thing and then they graduated into doing something like this. Try to follow their path just with a sense of curiosity and a sense of kind of a childlike wonder, which I feel like is such a weird statement to say, but when you really start to try to look at things from a little bit more of an ignorant perspective where you're just like, I don't understand this, but I want it, then that's going to really open up your mind to answering a lot more questions, because our brains are meant to answer questions. That's kind of their job. So the more questions that you can ask in your brain, even when you're just going about your day-to-day life, the more you're gonna get little hints from your subconscious that are gonna give you signs of what you should be doing in life. So if you see a woman who's driving a Range Rover and you're like, I want that, I literally love that car, that is my dream car, this woman is living my dream life, instead of focusing on the jealousy aspect of it and the negative emotions that come with that, start to ask questions. Start to just try to think things like, I wonder what she does for work, I wonder what area she lives in, I wonder what her daily routines are, I wonder what things got her here. And the more questions that you're asking, even in your own brain, your brain is going to work to try to actually solve that question, because again, that's what our brain is meant to do. So the more questions that you can ask and the more that you can get your brain to kind of live in this curious state of mind, the more that you're gonna find little answers that you would have never thought of in a million years. Now, I feel like it's a given to say that one of the best ways to figure out what your purpose is to really get to know yourself and really listen to yourself. But I think my personal favorite way to get to know yourself, or to kind of start a new era of learning who you're trying to become, is to treat yourself like somebody that you're dating. So kind of going through all of the same processes as when you're starting to date someone. You want to try to ask them a bunch of questions. You really want to try to figure out what their routine is, figure out what their schedule is. This is obviously going to come with a lot of journaling, which we love around here, but there are just so many little things that you want to try to get to know, and just really think of it like you're meeting somebody that you're potentially trying to date. Just the same as when you're starting to date someone, you really want to know what their values are. You want to know what their interests are. You want to know what their goals are, what their dreams are, and you really have to take a step back and ask yourself these same questions and really try to dig deep for some answers here. And what that means, you also have to figure out what your hobbies are. So this might mean kind of trying out some new things, maybe testing out some new hobbies. Anything that sparks your interest, you want to pay attention to, because there's a reason that it's sparking your interest. I used to live under the idea that people got excited about all the same things. Like if I would get really excited about a certain music artist or a certain TV show, I just assumed, oh no, this is just a good show, everybody would be excited about it. But then I started to realize, like, everybody has their own interests and everyone has different things that they're actually going to feel drawn to. And the more that you can follow that, and the more that you can actually listen to that and tap into it, the closer you're going to get to finding out what things actually light you up and what things might potentially be a source of purpose or a source of enjoyment in your life. And I think in general in your 20s, it's so important to have hobbies and to just try out new things, because we kind of forget about all of the things that we maybe once loved when we were little, or just hobbies that we could have been interested in that we just never tried. And I think this is just the prime time to do it, because once you're in your 20s, you're kind of past that teenage and college stage where you think you're too cool to go out and do things that are like fun or goofy or silly, and you're kind of in a state of mind where you're more like, man, I miss being a kid. I want to kind of connect to my inner child. I want to do something that's just going to be fun and going to take my brain off of doing work or stressing about life or relationships or anything like that. You are looking for any way to do it that's going to actually make you feel excited and not feel like it's a chore. So for me, I really need to get back into this, but I was in a big, heavy reading era for a while, and I really loved it. Just reading anything that was fiction, and I liked a lot of thrillers and things like that. And it connected me to my inner child so heavily, because I remember going to the library and checking out the scariest books that I could find at like 9-10 years old, which was not that scary at all, but I got so excited to do that. And then when I was reading a few years ago and I was really heavily into fiction books, it felt like I was 9 years old again. I felt like I was just reading all of these little books and having so much fun, and it just felt so good. And I know a lot of people are getting into different hobbies now, and I really want to try things like pottery. I know a lot of people are into crochet. I don't personally think that's something I would ever be good at, but I do want to start sewing. I have a lot of clothes that I have just been putting into a bin because I'm like, one day when I learn how to sew, I'll fix these, but it has never happened. So that is one thing that's heavily on my list. And I think just kind of looking around and seeing what other people do, even seeing what skills other people have that you're like, I wish I had that. Because for me, that was sewing, and I was like, oh my God, I would kill to be able to tailor my own clothes or fix a hole in my pants or just do little things like that that would actually improve my life. And for some people, that's things like baking or cooking, and they see somebody else who can do those things and they're like, wow, I really wish that I could do that. I wish that I could make my family a really good meal every single night, and that's something that would drastically improve their life. So if that's you, you should try to start taking some cooking classes or watch some videos online. We're in an era where everything is YouTubeable. I don't even think that's a word, but we're gonna make it a word today, because anything that you want to learn, you can learn on YouTube. So if you have ever looked at anything and thought, I wish I knew how to do that, the answer is somewhere inside of YouTube. I can 100% guarantee it. Okay, and last but not least, we are going to talk about a Japanese concept called ikigai. I think I'm saying that right. I'm not 100% sure. You'll see it most as like a chart type situation, a bunch of Venn diagrams. And the goal is that in the center of all 4 of these Venn diagrams, I'll put a link in the description if you want to see this chart, or if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put it on the screen here. But the goal is that the center of all of these Venn diagrams is your ikigai, or your life's purpose. The actual Japanese meaning of it is a reason for being, which I just think is so wonderful and such a good way to put it. But basically, what we have at the top of the Venn diagram is a section for things that you love. So what do you love to do in life? So you want to write as many things as you can down. Don't be afraid to really go all out with this, and even write down things that you think would not apply, because you would be surprised the way that this Venn diagram thing is set up is so insane, and it really helps you to just open up your mind and think about things that you might have never thought of. So the next big portion of the Venn diagram is what the world needs. So you want to write down as many things as you can that are just things that you think the world needs more of. Or if it's something that doesn't exist, what do you think the world needs in general? The bottom of this Venn diagram is what can you be paid for? So what are your skills? What are the things that you know that you could actually realistically be paid for? Even if it's something that would require you to maybe get a certification or take a few classes or to maybe even get a degree in, but you know that someday you could be paid for this thing, put that down. Write that down in this section. And lastly, the 4th big section of the Venn diagram is things that you are good at. So this is going to be just in general anything that you know that you're good at. Like for me personally, I am really good at doing data entry and doing things that are really meticulous, really boring, and anything that involves really close attention to detail. I'm really good at that. I don't enjoy doing it, but it is what I do for work right now because I am good at it. And there are so many things that you're good at. Even if you have to ask the people that are closest to you, just be like, what do you think I'm good at? You might be surprised by the answers you're gonna get. So the goal with all 4 of these Venn diagrams is that there is one thing in the center, or maybe a few things in the center, that overlap, that are going to give you a real sense of purpose or a real meaning to your life. And once you see everything and you can kind of see where it overlaps, I highly recommend doing this on paper and actually working through the chart, because it is so helpful and it's just such a fun experiment, if you will. But the goal is that once you have that center of all of these 4 different categories and all of these things, and you see where they overlap, you are going to really look at it and just be like, oh my God, that is what I'm supposed to be doing. That is what I can do in this world. And there might be a little bit of Googling or research needed when you're doing this, because you might be like, I don't understand what the overlap could be of what I'm good at or what the world needs. And you might have to get kind of creative and Google things like, how can I use this thing to help the world? Or how can I use this thing to make money? Whatever it is, you might have to just kind of play around a little bit to actually find what the center of your Venn diagram is. But I also love how this is set up, because it has certain overlaps of things like what you're good at and what you love. And the overlap of those 2 is just something that you're passionate about, or the overlap of what you're good at and what you can be paid for. That overlap is a good profession for you. I just am so obsessed with this, and I think it's something that everybody should at least do once and just see what your answers are and see what it makes you feel. Because overall, the whole purpose of finding your purpose is to enjoy the process and to really try out different things, and to not be afraid of admitting that you maybe pick something that you're not actually excited about, or something that you're not supposed to do, because every single person has picked something or done a profession or started a line of work or started a hobby or started a business that failed. at least once. And that's just kind of part of the process. You have to really accept that failure is going to be a part of it. And the quicker that you can accept that, the quicker you're going to be excited to fail, because the faster that you can fail and the faster that you can find things that don't work for you, the closer you're going to be to actually finding something that is going to work for you, that is going to make you feel fulfilled, and that is going to make you feel like you actually found your passion and found what you're supposed to do in life. And now that I have absolutely talked your ear off on finding your passion, I hope we can just all agree that being in our 20s is something that is so annoying and so frustrating, but it is also just such a fun time if you let it be fun and you let yourself just live in the experiences and actually focus on living your life for yourself and not living your life for other people. And on the topic of purpose, this is a wonderful time for me to plug my fitness and mindset app, because I am in the process of building this app. It is always improving. I'm always adding new things. I do weekly updates on TikTok of things that I've added to my app, and I will link it below, because you get 2 weeks for free when you start the app, and you get unlimited access to any brain or body boot camps, which my brain boot camps are basically just mindset programs that you can follow on different topics, and the body boot camps are in the works. There's always new body boot camps being added. I'm working on a strength program as we speak, but there is a boot camp for every single person and every single goal and every single need. So definitely check it out, because I think that's kind of my purpose in this world. So I'm definitely curious if this episode helped you in any way to get a little bit closer to what you think your actual purpose in life is. And if so, please drop a comment below and let me know either what you learned from this or what you think that your purpose is in this world. And on that note, that is all that I've got for you today. So until next time, be kind to your mind, to your body, and to others, and happy healing.